Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Alessandra Nadudvari and I'm an author based in Nova Scotia, Canada. I love Oak Island and it's a treasure hunt that has been going on for over 200 years now. In my free time, I interview people connected with the island, and I especially like talking to Oak Island theorists because they have done a ton of research and not all of it has been shown on the Curse of Oak Island. So these lengthy interviews give me an opportunity to dig into the theories further, deeper, and extract new knowledge from them. Today, I will be talking to Dave Petrella, who is an astrologer based in Texas. Dave has a very unique view of Oak Island and specifically the money pit. He thinks the treasure of Oak Island is of spiritual kind. So I hope that the interview will be interesting and unique, and that you will take away something from it that you can plug into your own life and make it a treasure of your own. Without further ado, I want to introduce to you Dave Petrella, who is an astrologer and Oak Island theorist. Enjoy. Hello, Dave.
Hey, Alessandra.
How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. How about you?
Excellent. I'm well, and I'm very stoked about today's interview. I actually haven't done one in like a year, so I'm very excited that we're doing this today. So, Dave, I have known you for a little while now, and when I first met you, you told me that you were Jack Begley's friend and that you were also an Oak Island series. And the very exciting part for me was that you're an astrologer. So how does an astrologer become an astrologer? Or how does somebody like you become an astrologer? I also know you're a scientist, a biologist. So how did you make that transition from biology to astrology, and what brought you to Oak Island?
Well, in terms of biology, I started in school way back. Well, probably, honestly, it was elementary school. I was probably like 10 years old, and they were teaching us general biology and human anatomy and things like that. And I said, you know what, I need more information. It's not enough. I need the details. So, of course, I was an avid reader like yourself and like a lot of people we know. And I got a book. I got several books about scientific inquiry and about like the body and like the famous world sites and the ancient sites and stuff like that. And I would just start reading, and I basically wouldn't stop. And the more detailed, the better for me. And it got to a point where I was asking my teachers, "Hey, what is this structure in the body?" And they're like, "I have no idea." And, and I'm like, "Okay, well, at 10 years old, I'm ready for this. So, I'm going to take it my own way then. If you guys can't support it." I started very early. And then, I went through high school and I took like advanced biology and everything. I got college credits for that. I took all the difficult science courses. And I learned, basically like the Western style. That's how they teach it in, let's just say, North America or in the West. And then I said, all right, I've kind of had enough of this. I took a year of college for biology, and I said, all right, now we need to look at something else, because there's other things, and some of the mystical concepts, they started to come up. And I said, all right, so there are references to the body and to the brain and even to the Bible and some of the religious texts. And I said, all right, so I'm going to take biology now, and we're going to take it over into the spiritual discipline. And then I started to learn about the chakra system, I think about in 2012. And, it kind of, they started to parallel each other, but it's not, the West shies away from a lot of the spiritual concepts that have to do with biology, whereas the East, of course, does not, because that's really where it originated, between India and China. And so I started to put all the stuff together, and I said, you know what, there's really something going on here, and it's something that hasn't really been taught in the West, but it's really important. And then you start to understand that these traditions really, they came from the East, and then they moved through the West. And back in the ancient world, Egypt was referred to as the West. So when I say the East, I'm talking, primarily India and China, Southeast Asia, that area. And so in any case, things used to be one unit, in terms of science, and then they got split apart. Astronomy and astrology used to be the same, and then they got split apart. The biology and the spirituality used to be one system, and they got split apart. So basically, I spent the last at least, 10 years at least, probably more like 14, 12 or 14 years, trying to put the pieces back together. And
Mhm.
so I don't shy away from difficult information or hard to obtain information. I really go digging deep for it because that's where we're really going to find the answers. Um, they're all out there. It's just actually, like Rick says on the show many times, I think he says, what, 1,000-piece puzzle, and they have 997 or something like this. Well, I mean, it's kind of similar because the way that I look at it is that the traditions, they all started out the same, and probably like 10,000 or more years ago, probably more than that. I mean, the Aboriginal Australians, they say at least 30,000 years. Um, Actually, you know what? No, I take that back. I think they said 60,000 years. So they say that they've been on this planet for 60,000 years, and their tradition has remained unbroken. And then
Wow.
you have, yeah, exactly. And then you have traditions like the Emerald Tablets, which were supposedly created by Thoth, the priest king of Atlantis. He brought them over to Egypt. That was a minimum of 30,000 years, supposedly.
Mhm.
And, we only have recorded history back to like 4,000, 5,000 BC. And then,
Mhm.
we have structures that are older than that, but we don't have any written documents or, pictographs or anything that really correspond to them. So something happened. I think it was a cataclysm. I think probably multiple cataclysms. We did have all the information together, and it's since gotten really broken apart. So anyway, to really kind of directly answer that question, it's just a pursuit of knowledge and science. And if you take it all the way and you're truly open to information, you're going to get to some junctures in the road that are quite surprising.
Mhm.
And when you can put together everything, like many people, like many scientists in particular, I thought astrology was ridiculous. But you know what? Having said that, I never actually gave it a fair chance. And that's something in scientific inquiry you really have to do. It's called the scientific method. You don't go in with your preconceptions. I mean, you can say this is my hypothesis, but if the data says anything different than that, you have to go with the data, and you have to repeat the experiment over and over. So it turned out that in 2015, I found my friend, who's now my friend, Santos Bonacci. I found him on YouTube because I was looking for information about biology, about actually the cerebrospinal fluid, which it's well known in the West, obviously, but it has a very important esoteric meaning. And it's really how the consciousness flows in liquid form through the body. It's moving through this, it's called the CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. It's moving through that fluid. And so I was looking for information on that. And then he happened to be an astrologer, and he did such a good job with the biology aspect that I said, I have to give this guy a chance. And so I gave him a chance, and I clicked on the column of his other suggested videos, and I said, all right. So since he proved to me that he knows what he's talking about with the other topic, which was even more obscure, I'm like, all right, this is the person I want to listen to on this topic. And I just had this, I had this, well, it was an inclination, but it was basically, I felt like the universe was asking me, it was saying, Dave, you have to take a look at this. Now's the time. And it's just like a mild push, kind of. You probably know what I'm talking about. It's like, it's given to you, it's put into your hands, and it's time to do something with it. And it turned out that after scientific inquiry, it's the same thing. I subjected it to the scientific method many, many, many times, at least 50 or 60 times. And then I said, you know what? This is true, because I'm looking at my chart. It's called a birth chart. The moment you're born, the positioning of the stars and planets in the sky. And I said, okay, so this is like 99% accurate. If I don't know how it's doing this, if it's not real, it doesn't make sense. Then I went to my family, I did their charts, and I went to my friends and I did their charts. Then I went to my extended family, and after I did about 50 or 60 of them, I said, okay, this is science. And it's science when you're doing it properly. And that's what I really want to stress to people, is that Mostly what people know about astrology are the newspaper horoscopes, which are pretty, you know, pretty much a fad. It's like we're doing
That
this.
was my extent of knowledge. The extent of my knowledge was just horoscopes in the newspaper, and I didn't really understand it.
Exactly, exactly. And so, you know, especially for people who are scientifically minded, you're gonna want they're gonna want more than that. They're not gonna just pick up the newspaper column and say, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'll just go with this." No, there's no way. So, it in the ancient world, it was taught as a science, and then unfortunately nowadays, it's just like a hobby. It's just like people,
Mhm.
I'm not profiling people at all. I welcome pretty much everyone's path, unless you're doing purposeful evil. That's a different story. But apart from that, you get to choose your own path. So um, the New Age community really kind of took it up, and they kind of made it their own. And then the science aspects fell by the wayside. And so
Mm,
then I said, all right, if I can't replicate this, like at least 75% accuracy, then I'm not going to believe it. And it
mhm.
was better than that. It was like 99%. And actually it's really essentially it's 100%, but the interpretation is where the discrepancy comes in. So anyway, it's looking at everything, looking at the science aspects, looking for replication of ideas, and then you can make, fairly solid conclusions based on your data set.
I just want to say something about astronomy that was combined with astrology in ancient civilizations. I was thinking about ancient Sumeria and how one of the first um, works of art, the stone tablets that they created where they portrayed their gods, for example, Enki and Lil, they also depicted our solar system and how many planets it had. And I think they even included Pluto, which was amazing because we didn't know about Pluto until what, 1940s or something like that, when we had the ability to actually look at it. So our ancestors, especially the first or the oldest civilization, they already paid attention to the stars and the planets, of their movements, positions. They probably try to, tie it in with agriculture, like when to plant crops and stuff like that. And then I thought, where else did I hear about a very important or importance or like a really good use of astrology? And it was actually um, in the Bible, because the arrival of Jesus Christ, his birth, was foretold that he would come, that he would be born. And there were those three kings or three wise men who saw his arrival in their astronomical charts. And it was a star that guided them to the place where he was born, or so the story goes. So a star showed the three kings where baby Jesus was, which was, in a barn, in a manger. But that's
Mhm.
how they found it. It was thanks to a heavenly body. And maybe astrology and astronomy fell by the wayside later during the era of Christianity. But I think um, maybe now is a good time to look at it again with the knowledge and understanding that we have now in the 21st century. And I think that in modern science, it would be really good if we brought meaning back to science. The modern science is very um, materialistic and focused on the solid part of our existence, the material part, and not so much on the meaning and the spiritual part. So I think that if we could bring it back, science and spirituality back into one, that it would be a lot more interesting for people, and they would be able to apply to their lives much better. Off you
Yeah,
go. Keep
I
talking.
agree. I agree 100%. I mean, really, if you're doing it properly, science and spirituality are the same. They're
Mm,
one, and that's
okay.
exactly what you were saying, is that they're integrated into each other if you're teaching it properly. And the people who knew that, in my opinion, the best were the people from ancient India. They
Mm,
knew about they knew about metaphysics. They knew about quantum physics. thousands of years ago, and then you have the new scientists who come up and they say, "Oh, we just discovered quantum." No, you didn't. You did not discover quantum physics. Look in the Vedas. Look in the ancient texts. They talk all about metaphysics. They knew it way before the Western world did it. You have to give credit to the people who understood it well in the beginning. And by the way, there's spirituality, including ancient Egypt and a lot of the other parts of the ancient world, even Greek mythology. It was very magical, very, very magical. They don't, if they show their gods and they share the stories of the myths and everything, I believe actually, and I'm not going to say a complete 180, but I've really come around to believe that most of what they're saying is, in one sense, literal. Is that when they describe these, wizards and witches and like monsters in the sea and all this stuff, we lived in a magical world back then. The parameters are completely different. The predominating laws, in my opinion, have shifted based on the age. Again, it goes back to astrology. We just moved into Aquarius. We came out of Pisces. But really, you want to get into the real magic. And actually, I had this conversation with my friend who's from India last week, and it's come up several times. And I've actually done a show about the cycles of time with one of my friends, Karen Holton. And what I discovered recently was that the story of Krishna, which is an ancient Indian god, the Hindus still worship Krishna to this day. It's the god that's usually depicted with blue skin. And Krishna left the world in, I believe it's 3102 BC. And it just so happens that the Indians say that what's called the Kali Yuga started at the same time that he left. The Kali Yuga is the dark age in the Yuga cycle, which is the Indian cycle of time from India. So they already knew that, and they said that's when that started. And the Mayans, it just so happens that the Mayans appear, their calendar starts in 3114 BC, which is 12 years before Krishna leaves. So that's, when you're looking at thousands of years, that's shockingly similar in time. Mm-hmm. And you look at, some of the things, again, I'm not trying to downplay, the Mayans were masters of telling time and specifically time, but they also had things like human sacrifice, and they had maybe some strange gods and questionable rituals and stuff. So to me, that's still in keeping with a Kali Yuga type cycle. So you have, over thousands and thousands and even millions of years, you have different cycles of time, and mm-hmm. different, what I believe is different laws come down into the planet, and they allow for different things. For instance, back in the time of the dinosaurs, the flora and the fauna were massive. They were mm-hmm. absolutely massive. And I think a lot of scientists even now question, it's like, how can something that large, in terms of the rules of, and I don't necessarily believe gravity, I believe more density is how I describe it. But how can something that large stand up and move and function and have enough food to eat? And, the laws, the system allows for different things depending on the cycle of time. And I also believe, by the way, on that topic, that things weighed a lot less. If you had, here's a good example. If you had like speaking of dinosaurs, I'll give you an example with dinosaurs. If you had a really, really large, like plastic dinosaur or stuffed animal dinosaur, something like that, the size of the object or the body is not depicting how heavy, the density of it. So let's say that like they weren't dense in the same way, or quantum physics was not applying in the same way during that period of time when they existed. I think something similar happened during this whole megalithic age that happened on this planet, where the stones, they didn't weigh hardly anything. Like we're not thinking about physics and about how things can shift. It's not, we have to, to work with what we can see today with our own eyes. But you know what? When I look back in the ancient world, that's one of the first things I was thinking. I'm like, what if they didn't weigh that much? Or what if we were a lot stronger? Or what if it was giants that built it? Or what if there's all kinds of things that can come up? But again, it's the same thing. The more we can be open to the inquiry, the more we can learn. And I just wanted to comment about the three magi real quick. And yes. Actually, that probably would be a good segue into talking about the three
Okay.
boys on Oak Island, because
Oh, okay.
we're talking about three, obviously. It's a very common number in all mysticism. Really, it's the Trinity. It's the positive, the negative, and then the neutral. You can also call it the masculine, the feminine, and the neutral. It's the
Mhm.
same concept. It's the two sides plus the center where they come together. That's
Mhm.
all three is. That's really what three is keying on. But yeah, the three magi, I think they were astrologers from Persia. They were coming from the east and they were headed into the Holy Land. And in terms of the star, I've heard many theories about that. One of the things that I do as a scientist is I keep a full open inquiry all of the time. I never put things in the trash can. It's always in the back burner in case I need it. So all of the things that people have said, oh, I think the star was this, or I think it was this, or I think it was this. I have like 10 or 20 of those always sitting in the back of my head because I wasn't there. I can't say what exactly it was. So I need to have some humility and I need to entertain the possibilities. And I think that's how we developed, even with Oak Island, all the theories coming in, the more you can hear and the more you can be open to, we might come up with the thing that we need. You don't know. And there's no sense in saying, when none of us were here, you can't say, no, he wasn't here in 1506 or whatever. You really can't say that because we didn't see it happen. You have the archaeological artifacts and stuff like that. You have documents. But in terms of seeing something with your own eyes, if I haven't seen it with my own eyes, I I don't I don't give a formal statement about a formal conclusion. So it's what I call a working conclusion, which means that if new information comes in, I'm able to shift it or to change it, shape it. That's good science. So in any case, the star, it may have been a conjunction between Venus and Jupiter. That's a really good one because Jesus, he came at the beginning of the age of Pisces.
Mhm.
And by the way, Jesus said, I will be with you until the end of the age. That's an actual quote from the Bible. The end of the age of Pisces. And then he left. And then it's what I call an ascended master. A new ascended master comes in for each new age. So he had his time. Jesus had his time in the age of Pisces. And anyway, what I was getting at is that Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces and Venus is very happy in Pisces. So that would be a good contender spiritually for that guiding the three wise men to the manger, but also astronomically and astrologically, it makes sense
Mm.
because when you
Pis-
have
I was
Pisces, yeah,
going to say Pisces, the people who are born in the sign of or under the sign of Pisces that I personally know, they're very sensitive, emotional in a good way, and empathic. So as we know, Jesus Christ was very empathic, compassionate, kind, and that's something that would make sense in the age of Pisces. And now you said that age is over and we're in a different age of Aquarius. So how long does an age last? Is it like a couple thousand years?
yeah, most accounts say that it's 2,160 years each.
2,160. That's a very specific number. Okay.
It is because astrology is mathematics, and again, that's where I come into the astrological picture. I'm
Okay.
using I'm using math when I do birth charts and when I do relationship matching and when I try to pick days that people potentially might have more success and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm literally using math,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. That's it. You just have to know the meaning behind, if the number is here, what is the spiritual meaning behind this? You have to have some intuition. You have to have that still. But essentially, it's, if it wasn't me doing it, if it was another good astrologer, they're going to give you the same thing. It's mathematics. Even if it's not even a human, it's a software program. You can go online, you can do a free chart, and you're going to see, wow, this is telling me it's actually scary. It's scary how true this is. It's not even a human doing it because it's math.
But how interesting it is, and fascinating to me, how something like that, math and stars and planets, how they can influence a person who is born at a certain place in a certain time, influence their personality or the options that they have in this life, and how they will interact with other people, get along or not get along. Is this some kind of an imprint that we receive? Like when I was born, did my soul get imprinted by the planets and the moon and the sun
Yeah, it's actually
with
exact.
certain pattern or options? Is that my
Yeah,
menu?
yeah, it's exactly like that, Alessandra. It's I actually say that you get stamped.
Oh,
It's a
stamped. Okay, okay. Imprinted, stamped. Okay, there we go.
right. I mean, it's the same concept, but that you get stamped physically
Hmm.
and mentally with the conditions of the sky at the moment of your birth. So
So physically, if I may interrupt, we have DNA, right? That's our genetic code, and it unfolds over time in our body changing. Sometimes we have diseases or something like that in our DNA, and they manifest as we age. So would we also receive some kind of spiritual DNA when we arrive, and then our personality kind of unfolds along those lines?
yeah, you actually, I'm glad you brought that up. You have astrology gets overlaid on top of your spiritual essence. I'll call it that. I usually just say the spirit, but the spirit is separate from astrology. The spirit
Hmm.
is much higher, much higher.
Yes.
I actually teach people how to get out of astrology, but in order to do that, you have to know how it works. Um, and I can actually a little bit later in the presentation, I can show you. I can kind of illustrate that with something that I drew up in terms of the cosmology of the solar system and how it's actually set up and the gradients and everything. But basically, if you know anything about the chakra system, you have the 7 chakras, which are the 7 colors that go up your spine. Usually you see it in like people in a yoga pose. They have the 7 spheres or 7 circles of different colors going up the spine, and those correspond to the 7 planets. So again, biology and astrology are coming together. That's one of infinite
Now,
combinations that they make.
Dave, for those people who might be watching this and who don't know what chakras are, can you tell me and my audience um, who invented chakras or first described chakras? Where does this knowledge originate?
Well, the chakra system, by all accounts, it really comes out of India. It's used really throughout Asia still. I mean, very popular in Hinduism, Buddhism, probably a few of the other ones as well. But basically, it's part of the scientific and biological system that you come into when you're born. So it's actually part of the energy grid. You can call it that way, of a human body. And all it is that the top of the head is the positive terminal, and the base of that's the 7th chakra, and then the bottom of the spine is the negative terminal. That's the 1st chakra, and so it's like a battery, or it's a conductor of energy. It creates energy. It actually creates fusion if it's done properly, and you have a limitless power with that. But in between the two ends, you have the different points along the spine. And so the chakras go up the center of the spine. They're the 7 different colors, which correspond to the 7 different planets, the 7 days of the week, the 7 notes, everything. Anytime you hear a 7, there's multiple levels of correspondence. And that's one of the things I want to get across to people, is that the more disciplines you look at, you're going to see that, oh, I see 7 here. I see 7 in the Bible. I see 7 in the human body. I see 7 in astrology. I see 7 in music. I see 7 in the days of the week. And
Seven
then you
days
can,
of the week. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And then
And,
7 planets.
don't we go through some kind of cycles in life that last about 7 years, where every 7 years we feel like we want a different job, or just change our situation in life, like we're done with this thing that we have done for the last 7 years and we are ready to move on to the next phase or next project? Do you ever feel like that, like every 7 years you want to revamp yourself or your life?
Yeah, you could probably say 7. I mean, in astrology, you call it the return of a planet. And
Oh.
so if you have Jupiter return, that's, I believe it's 20, so it's a little bit longer. Or if the Saturn return is like 29, 30 years. So those are some of the more well-known cycles. But yeah, I mean, that wouldn't surprise me. You've also got the moon cycles. You've got the solar cycles, which is like 11, between 11 and 12 years, something like that. So any of these things, any of these, actually, I would say any and all of these apply. And so it depends just on what you're feeling, what you're looking at. Some of it's perspective, some of it's actually in your birth chart. There's also what's called a progress chart, which tells you about how the changes happen year after year and how it's slightly different year after year for your chart. So yeah, it's all there. You know, you just have to, you really just have to, you have to push a little bit. You have to inquire. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is to make it easy for people to do that
Mhm.
because of the resources that I have and the amount of time that I've spent synthesizing everything.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, if you make it into an easily understandable format, then I could probably save someone 14 years of their life, and I could probably teach them almost everything I know in a couple months, you know. And so that's one of my missions, is that I don't want people to have to suffer needlessly and waste time.
Mhm.
You know, make, by all means, make your own connections, but I lay everything out when I do presentations and when I teach and when I do astrology, so that people can see the different levels of relation. Because
Mhm.
if you're only looking at one discipline or one science or one side of it, you're missing, you know, probably 95% or more of the actual full story. And if you don't have the full story, you really can't make great decisions. You're missing
No,
the
no,
information that you need.
we need to understand ourselves, and the better I understand myself, the more clearly I can see the path I'm on, and it changes the way I make choices for myself. So if I'm not aware of something, once it comes to my awareness, then I have this aha moments, and I immediately like filter everything through that, and just,
Hmm.
I like connecting dots and learning something new about myself all the time, or how I think, how I process things, and it just makes life easier. So are you going to teach us today how to understand ourselves? I see you have a big wheel behind you with
Oh yeah.
I can see Aries and Taurus. Okay, Taurus here.
Hmm. Yeah. This is the zodiac.
That's the
Um,
zodiac, yes.
So it's actually interesting because, and I haven't really talked about this a lot, but the word zodiac, it actually means the wheel of animals or the circle of animals,
Okay.
um, coming out of, you mentioned Sumeria, coming out of ancient Sumeria. And you know, you can see that a lot of these signs are animals, in fact, animals.
Yes.
Um, you've got, with the exception of Gemini, which is it's really more like a concept. It's a duality concept of
Hmm.
twins.
Hmm.
That's not really an animal. Those are all animals. Virgo is, again, it's a concept. This it's really the feminine concept,
Hmm.
or the concept of the virgin. And then Libra is the scales. Okay, these are all animals. And then Aquarius is the human. That's,
Hmm.
if you're looking for where are we in this? This is where we are. We're Aquarius. Humans are Aquarius. So in any case, this is how you do astrology. You know, it shows you, if you can see, I got the equinoxes on here. I've got the
Hmm.
solstices, two equinoxes, the spring and the fall, beginning of the spring and the beginning of the fall, then the beginning of the summer, the beginning of the winter. And then you have everything in between. And so this is, you know, if you're starting with astrology, even if you're not starting with astrology, this is the model. This does not change. You can count on this to be accurate year after year. It also depicts the ages. The yearly cycle goes this way, and the cycles of the ages actually goes the other way.
Oh,
And
really?
so, because it's called precession, an apparent slippage of the positioning in the sky of the constellations.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily an actual slippage. You know, that's a point of contention too, but it's the apparent slippage. It's like when if you take a video of your car, and the car, and you're sitting or standing up, and the car is moving you can see the side of the car as it moves past you.
Mhm.
Sometimes it looks like the wheels are turning backwards.
Yes, yes.
That's what it is, and we know it's
I
not doing
I
that.
wondered about that when I was a child. Why are the
Yeah,
wheels going backward?
and this is the same applies to astrology. And
Okay.
so I don't think it's an actual slippage. I think it's an apparent slippage
Hmm.
that's produced by the motion of the sun through the year, which is the
Very,
yearly
very
cycle.
interesting.
But either way, it doesn't really matter because the effects are real, and even if it's apparent, we still feel them in
Mhm.
terms of which age we're in and what the predominating spiritual understanding and discipline is during that age and things like that. So yeah, in any case, this is that's a zodiac, that's astrology, basic astrology. You got the 12 signs, like I said, and like you had mentioned before, it shows you what season you're in, so that
Mhm.
even back in the ancient world, even if you don't want to talk about, oh, I'm a Gemini and like it means that I have dualistic qualities and I look at both sides of things, you know that you need to have plants in the ground well before Gemini starts. Because
Mhm.
if you don't, you're not going to have food and then your culture might die. You know, it's actually
Ah,
very serious. You really need to get the seeds in the ground somewhere in this region right here, Aries and Taurus.
okay.
And Taurus is, it's the bull that they plow the field and everything like
Mhm.
this. They all many levels of meaning.
Heavy,
And
heavy
then
lifting and heavy pulling. Yes, that's Taurus.
yeah, and you know what? What happens when the sprout comes out of the ground? It splits into two. That's Gemini.
Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's generally when that's happening.
Oh,
Um,
you're right.
we're depending on where you are depending on where you are in the world. I mean, we're still in Taurus. We're at the very end of Taurus. We're about to come to Gemini here, but it does depend on your latitude, and there's other altitude and all kinds of stuff. There's lots of factors, but when you look at the natural cycle, you're going to see that the principles apply to the natural cycle of the natural world, and to the stars, and to your body, and to the Bible, and to the holy books, and to everything. This is your blueprint if you want to understand how the solar system functions and how it works. Now, it's not how the universe works. It's how this solar system works on this model.
Okay.
And every solar system is probably different, to be honest. And that's how you have the infinite variety of life in the universe.
Dave,
But it's a contained
Dave,
system.
Dave, if I were to travel outside of the solar system and arrive in a different solar system, would I still be under the influence of the planets and stars from my home solar system?
I would say probably not. No, because the ancient model contains all of the stars that we see
Mm-hmm.
in the sky. It's different than the model NASA is going to tell you. I'll let
Okay.
people decide for them. I have lots of presentations on YouTube. People can check it out. But it's a different story because NASA says a lot of the stars you see are in different galaxies and they're outside of our solar system. Well, the ancient model doesn't say that at all. It says all the stars are in the eighth sphere, which is just past the orbit of Saturn, and it's with Uranus rules the it's called the fixed stars of the firmament, and then past that you have Neptune, and then you have Pluto, quote unquote Pluto, which it may not actually be Pluto. There's a lot of contention with that as well. But once you get outside the 10th sphere or the 10th orbit, the 10th planet out there, then you're getting towards the edges of the solar system. And then the influence likely that you'd be feeling the most would be to the nearest star, which we may be a part of a binary star system. That's something I'm working on right now. And so you would start to be feeling influences of other stars, other galaxies, all kinds of things. But the local field, like Jupiter and Mars and Venus, if you break outside of our solar system, you shouldn't be experiencing any of those influences because the entire solar system is confined in a massive sphere. It's called the Oort cloud. If you've heard of that before.
Yes, I have. Yes, Oort cloud.
Okay. Outside of the Oort cloud, theoretically, you're free of all the influence of everything inside of the Oort cloud.
Mhm.
You reach a point where the bodies don't influence you anymore. It depends on, well, I was gonna say distance, but then that gets into quantum physics and metaphysics and all this stuff. So let's just say, yeah, once you get outside of it, the whatever the local conditions are will be influencing you the most. You will possibly be influenced by other things, but it's going to be a smaller percentage. Depends on what's the closest. And actually, that's why my friend Santos Bonacci, he does tropical astrology. He's the reason that I am an astrologer as well. I learned that in 2015, like I mentioned, when I was looking for the videos about biology. And he and myself as well both believe that tropical astrology, or Western astrology, which is the kind that I do, which comes out of Egypt, is going to give you more accuracy than Vedic astrology, because Vedic astrology is based on the constellations primarily, whereas Western astrology, tropical astrology are based on the planets primarily. And the planets, as we all know, are closer to us than the stars or the constellations. So whichever one is closer, you're going to be feeling the immediate influence more, would be my explanation for that. And before I forget, I just wanted to comment on the three magi again. And
Yes.
if you had anything else you wanted to comment about astrology, I'd be happy to talk about it. But I'd really like to get into Oak Island too,
Yes,
because
let's.
there's a lot of parallels that people are going to see that I'm going to illustrate here in terms of the things that I'm seeing there and I've seen there for a long time. But I did want to say that the other thing, I'd mentioned the conjunction between Venus and Jupiter as possibly being that star. I mean, it could have been a supernova. That's another possibility. It could have been, this is a little bit further out there, but it could have been a extraterrestrial craft. Now we know that there was a pillar of fire during the day when the Israelites came out of Egypt and they were going back to the promised land. So what is that? What is a pillar of fire? It's kind of creepy. It's kind of creepy to me. You also had a cloud, pillar of fire by night and a cloud by day. A cloud that they were following this cloud. The cloud brought them into the Holy Land, and the pillar of fire brought them into the Holy Land. So you're seeing there's a common theme that they're following something. They're getting assistance from something in the sky.
Well, we know there are fire tornadoes. I don't know if they had something like that in that part of the world at the time. But I have seen videos of fire tornadoes. That's when a tornado comes close to a forest fire, let's say, and picks up the flames and starts spinning them around. Then there is, well, also if you have like a forest fire, sometimes the air currents will create this spinning spiral and it flames, and then it moves, it travels. I've seen videos from British Columbia last year. They had huge forest fires. What else could it be? Well, I don't know. Maybe somebody was flying over them or over land and you know, like leading the way, and they were signaling which way to follow. Maybe there was some kind of a plasma device, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I go with it too. Is I think about orbs, I think about plasma,
Orbs.
I think
Okay.
about UFOs.
Yes.
And you know, and the other reason for that too is because there's descriptions of strange things in the sky all throughout the Bible. It's literally it's everywhere in the Bible and the other texts, religious texts too. I mean, if you go to ancient India, they talk about vimanas, which were flying craft, and they were as large, right? And they were as large as cities, and they had like these massive battles in the sky and everything. So it's not out of the question, and I like to put in front of people because there's lots of strange things that happen in the Bible that I don't think we've looked closely at enough. I think we're doing a better job nowadays, but I mean, you know, the Ark of the Covenant, what is that? That ties into Oak Island possibly too.
Yes.
And all these strange things that are not like normal life. You know, there was something weird going on. There was something mystical going on. And I actually think that's some of the things that really interest people about Oak Island is that it's this unexplained mystery. It's pretty mystical. Some of the things that happen there, you know, with equipment failures, and they have, I mean, Dave Blankenship saw the fire. Actually, Alessandra, that was a pillar of fire. That was a fireball. I think he described it as coming off the shore onto the island. So that's.
I think he observed it above the swamp, and it moved, I think, towards the Money Pit area, if I remember correctly. But yes, it was like a fiery ball or a huge orb during the day, and other people saw it and alerted him because they thought that there was a fire on Oak Island, and it turned out to be some kind of a very bright orb. of
Yeah,
light.
exactly. So
Yeah.
maybe that's what we're talking about with the pillar of fire in the Bible. I
Mhm.
think it is. I think it's the same type of phenomenon.
Right.
Um, but in any case, yeah, all these concepts will come in, and we can talk about the Holy Grail maybe if we have time, and the Ark of the Covenant and stuff like that, in terms of what might be buried in the money pit, because
Hmm.
you have to know a little bit about ancient history to try to tie in some of those concepts.
Hmm.
But yeah, basically, I just kind of want to go back to the beginning a little bit. So you're correct. I am friends with Jack Begley. In 2016, let me actually go back a year before that. No, yeah, I think it was the end of 2015. So the end of 2015, I sent a letter, or an email rather, to Oak Island Tours, and I said, "Hey guys, I have a theory. I'd love to be able to talk about it. I'd love to just even to get on the phone with one of you guys, or send an email or something." And it was probably it must have been about a week later, and Rick actually calls me. Rick
Oh
Labini
my
calls me
gosh.
in January of 2016, and we have about a 2-hour conversation.
Dave, that's
And
quite the honor to be called
yeah,
by Rick. Like personally, he doesn't do that too many times. So
I know. It was great. So I went over my theory with him, and we talked about we had to go into some pretty in-depth mysticism in terms of what I
Mhm.
think is going on. I don't know if he necessarily spends a lot of time on that side. I think I think the Lagina brothers tend to do a little bit more of the science side, and let's see the evidence, let's see the artifacts.
Yes.
They do some theory stuff, but in terms of the high level physics and metaphysics, I don't think they spend a lot of time there. So some of the information I shared was it might have been the first time that Rick had heard some of these concepts. Some of them are pretty high level concepts. I tried to put it as simply as possible, but were you going to say something else, Andrew?
I was just going to say that the audience, the fans of the show, The Curse of Oak Island, they are the same. They want to see the hard evidence. They want to see the proof in the pudding.
Right, right. And actually, actually, we don't necessarily, because the money pit's not intact anymore, by all
Right.
intents and purposes. I mean, maybe at the very bottom. I mean, I doubt
Mhm.
it. I doubt it. I think it's been completely,
Compromised.
yeah, dismantled and
Yeah.
everything, right?
Right.
Because it was, well, the first part of it was only down about 100 feet to the first chest, that was supposedly was found. And so, I mean, we know, if Dunfield was in fact in the right area, then he was down 140 feet. Most of that would have been destroyed, if we're only
Wow.
talking about 100 feet. But then you have the chapel vault, which was at 153, which could possibly still be sitting I think it might be sitting on the bedrock. I actually think that the chapel vault, now, after having seen season 9, and
Hmm.
every season that comes on, I say, all right, there's another piece of information that's coming in, and it might only be one or two things per season for me, because I've been following this mystery, I mean, at least since 2014, and so it's been quite a while, and I've watched all the episodes, I've read many articles, primary source documents, I've talked to people. So there's not a lot of things I haven't heard before related to the story, because I
Hmm.
spent so much time with it. But occasionally there's something that comes up. In this season, I don't know why it was that I hadn't considered it before. Well, I had considered it, but okay. So here's the thing: the chapel vault, it was said to be 153 feet. Now, this season, in one of the caissons, I believe, they actually hit bedrock at 153 feet.
Oh,
Now, the
good
description,
job.
yes. So the description of the chapel vault was that it was covered in concrete, and then of course the
Mhm.
wood and all the gold, and the manuscript supposedly that was balled up inside of that, and the gold chain and all of this stuff. Well, for me, the first thing I said is that the first thing you're hitting is a concrete-like substance, which just so, and this has come up many times, especially in the past, I think with the Triton Alliance with Dan Blankenship, but that the anhydrite bedrock is essentially like a type of concrete. It looks like
Mhm.
concrete, it acts like concrete, it crumbles like concrete. When it's
Right.
wet, it's like a putty like concrete. It's very,
Hmm.
very similar. So this will get into, I'll cover some of this as we're going on, but I think okay, first of all, let me say this. I do believe there is something in the money pit, but I think it's in C1. I think
Mhm.
it's a lot deeper than any of the records ever described.
Mhm.
So, and I don't know.
Is C1 the shaft where they found traces of silver? What was that Dr. Ian Spooner's guess that there was like this large load of silver? Was that in C1?
That was in, yes, I believe that was C1. I think there were traces of silver and gold around most of the C1 cluster, is what they call it.
Okay.
There were higher concentrations in different boreholes, but certainly in that region, yeah. In that whole general region, they were finding traces of gold and silver. And by the way, silver and gold occur naturally together.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
it's just, and I'm going to draw it to astrology now because the sun is gold, the moon is silver, and look at the colors in the sky. Those are the
Mm-hmm.
colors. Those are the metals of the sun and the moon. So when you go down to nature now, you're seeing that, okay, every time I find gold, I'm finding silver with it. Well, that's the same. The sun and the moon, they're partners in the sky. It's the
Mm-hmm.
man and the woman in the sky, so you can see in the physical laws, you see the corollaries when you talk about astrology. And the
Mm-hmm.
more you, and biology and everything else, and the more that you're seeing this develop, it really demands further inquiry. But in any case, yeah, C1, and more specifically, C1 was where they found the shiny gold object.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when I saw that, I was actually alone in the house when I saw that episode. I think it was 2015 or 20, I think it was 2015. And I got this feeling about it, and it was a pretty uncomfortable feeling. And I said, there's something,
Uncomfortable?
well,
Why
I'll
would?
put it this way, because it was weird to me. There was
Oh,
something
okay.
weird about that video footage.
Okay.
And
Okay.
we know that when the divers went down there, they had all kinds of electrical interference. They
Mm-hmm.
couldn't find the gold object, even though it was
Right.
obvious when they put the ROV down.
It's classic Oak Island, Dave. I mean,
Yeah,
I've seen
exactly.
stuff go wrong on Oak Island a few times. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
But now here's the thing: is that the top of C1 is at 171, I believe, feet.
Okay.
The bottom of C1 is about 190, roughly.
Okay.
So that's well below anything that was documented from the beginning of the Money Pit search, which is actually why it makes it even stranger for me, because we might be talking about, this is the weirdest part for me, is that we might be talking about two separate things happening. I think that what they found in C1, I think, is an ancient treasure. Like, when I say ancient, I'm talking like 10,000 years ago, or possibly more. Um, when the geology was different, Mahone Bay used to not be full of water.
Would
It
that,
used to,
Dave, would that be antediluvial?
yeah, I think it probably would be, or I think maybe around the time of Atlantis.
Wow.
Um, I thought about Mahone Bay being like a satellite of Atlantis, kind of that area. And also
Okay.
not just there, but also the east coast of the United States as well, Massachusetts and parts of Maine. I think that they were some of the outlying colonies of Atlantis, and I think that people settled there possibly first when I believe Atlantis was real. I believe it did go down. Um, so in any case, I think there's something in there that is not related to the Money Pit story, and I think that's what they found in C1, and I think they don't know that yet, and it's a really weird feeling that I have
Wow.
about that. Now the Money
Interesting.
Pit, exactly. Now the Money Pit itself, because all of the descriptions, the old descriptions, they really kind of stopped at the chapel vault.
Yes.
Some of them, and that was 153 feet supposedly. Now some of the newer discoveries, with the Triton Alliance and with Dan Blankenship and everyone, they were finding things when they were drilling. They found pretty strange things, maybe down to 200 feet. Obviously, 10x was down to 235. And, so it goes, somehow this mystery goes deeper than 150, which is, in some of the groups that I participate in on Facebook, people are asking, well, why are they stopping at 150? And C1, they found stuff a lot lower than that. I think
Mhm.
what the Laginas are doing right now is that they're focusing on the Money Pit story, because that's the whole point of the search. It's not necessarily other things you might happen to stumble upon. It's let's figure out this 100-foot thing that with the 90-foot stone idea, and let's figure out if there's chests down there. Let's figure out if the chapel vault was real. I think they have enough on their plate with just those few things that I think that's why they're trying to focus on that. But
I can agree with that. What you have just said, they have enough on their plate with just Money Pit, and to also search elsewhere. Um, it would have to be a much larger operation than it is now.
right, exactly. And I'm just following it. Well, I'll get to it in a second, but I was involved. I was involved with the search in 2017. And I'll tell you, I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to say a huge amount out of respect for the island, mostly, because I think there's something very special there, and I'm not trying to necessarily expose everything that I feel like I've touched upon. But I do want to focus on the Money Pit because that is the story behind Oak Island, and that's the
Yes.
whole reason why everyone's there. You know, so
Yes.
literally
And
and
it's the
figuratively,
story that people love the most. Like you said,
right,
three boys or a young man
right,
discovering something.
right. And it's I think it's what needs to be solved first. I actually think it's kind of like an order of operations. Is that there's a lot of things that are going on that island, in my opinion. But the first thing that needs to be solved is the Money Pit, and
Mhm.
I fully support what they're doing. It might not be identical to the way that I would do it. I would have done the big dig 10 years ago if it was up to me, and I bet you it would have come out possibly to the same amount that they've spent putting all these caissons down and everything like this. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but if you want to have and by the way, you're not going to destroy anything if you do the freeze ring method, like 100-foot diameter freeze ring circle, and then you just cut the chunks of ice out little by little, and then you let it thaw, and then you have an archaeologist go through each block. You put it on a grid pattern, and then you're going to see where everything was exactly, and you're not going to damage anything, and you don't
Mhm.
have to worry about busting something or ripping a part of something off, or the ancient artifacts or whatever like this. So that would have been my vote 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Uh, I believe there's a timeline though, and I think it's a mystical timeline. And I think there's something that we can't see that's keeping them on a certain track. And I think things need to be revealed in time, the proper time. It's all about the proper time. And even with astrology, it's all about if it's not the right time, then it's not going to happen. It's not the
Right.
right time, then the age of Aquarius is not going to start. It's not,
Mhm.
all this stuff. So we have to be ready. I think we have to be ready for the discovery. But for me, the discovery is in C1. It's not anything above 150 feet or above bedrock. I hope
So
I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think it's necessarily something's there.